Watch this.
I'd never gone to a hearing for someone who I'm trying to free from prison where the townspeople are protesting that he should be free.
A BSU professor helped Christopher Tapp get that freedom after 20 years in prison. Sadly, Chris only got to enjoy it for about 6 years, but he made the most of it, trying to help others in the same situation. Tomorrow is Election Day, and Ada County isn't taking any chances. They're securing your votes in the ballot box with a bigger box. Well, actually, it's a cage, which sounds more secure, right? Speaking of a bigger box, the Ada County Sheriff is asking for help to build a bigger jail. But the way he is asking might not actually be legal. So it is Election Day tomorrow, and you likely know there's more than just city and school district leaders on your local ballot. For example, if you live in Caldwell, you have a chance to approve a bond for 2 new fire stations. If you live in Middleton, you're going to decide if the city is going to remain a dry city. And if you live in Valley County, you're being asked to fund a new ambulance district. Or not. You could say no to all 3 of those things. As for those who live in Ada County, the state's most populated, there's a $72 million bond on the ballot to build a bigger, better jail. And maybe you got this week at some point, this mailer. A lot of you did, including a viewer who sent us this message when they got theirs. Ada County Sheriff Department, Sheriff's Office that is breaking the law by sending mailers at the taxpayer's expense, advocating for the jail expansion. That was the viewer comment. And you probably have had enough mailers and text messages sent to your phone and to your mailbox to, well, enough to wallpaper a living room. And sure, they can be annoying, but are they illegal? That depends on your interpretation of Idaho's Public Integrity in Elections Act. Well, how would Idaho's leader of state elections interpret it? Here's Joe Paris.
Lots of literature landing in inboxes and mailboxes ahead of the election. This one about the Ada County jail bond, though, it has some asking about the Public Integrity in Elections Act. Best person to ask, Idaho's Secretary of State, Phil McGrain.
It's actually a relatively new statute that the legislature passed, really prohibiting the use of public funds for political activity or other things, the things that probably many of your viewers who are calling in are expecting and saying, you can't promote yourself as a candidate for office using public funds, for example.
That extends to government entities like Ada County, using public funds to promote a bond item. That includes mailers, text messages, and websites, all utilized by Ada County. However, there is an important caveat in the law.
Particularly as it relates to this, there is an exemption. There's a series of exemptions in the Public Integrity and Elections Act, and one of them is allowing districts who are working on bonds or levies to provide educational information, including the expected tax impact of any bonds or levies that will be put on the ballot before a voter.
The jail bond mailer does include an in-depth analysis of the tax impact to the community.
And I think that's where this fits in, and you can see where the Ada County Sheriff's Office, I think, is attempting to do some of that education with the materials that they provided out there. But when it comes in a slick form that looks like a campaign mailer or something else, I think that does raise some questions like you've experienced.
The informational mailer seems to play it pretty safe with language, but the verb need, for example, can seem biased depending on its context.
They're not saying vote for it, but I guess where's the line in terms of information and advocacy?
I think this is one of the big questions, and it's one of the challenges, particularly with bonds and levies. And you can see over the history, the legislature has struggled with where to draw this line. And similarly, districts have struggled. And I think that we're seeing that here with Ada County in terms of what is the line in terms of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
To be clear, Ada County meets requirements of the informational flyer. There is, however, a major nuance.
I think this is an example of that where it does appear they're getting very close to the line. They're not on any of the materials I've seen, whether it's the website, the mail, or others, saying vote for specifically, but they're certainly providing information that probably lends a voter to at least be more aware of what's going on in the jail. And I can see why some people have concerns in terms of, does it get a little too close to that line?
So something to keep an eye on for sure. And Ada County confirms to us that this informational flyer, they sent it out and they paid for it. And Ada County, they're not hiding that. And it's also important to note that they do talk about things like alternative sentencing on their site, things that they did to try and cut down the jail population, which is something that people against the jail bond have said, well, why don't you utilize things like cutting down just the amount of people that come into it? So, Brian, it's a very interesting, nuanced situation. Again, this is a law that came out in 2018, so still kind of feeling it out.
Secretary of State McGrain mentioned an exception to this if you're providing information. But when does it cross the line, as you talked about, from being informational to being advocating for? There's some precedent on this, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's actually going through the court system right now up in the Bonneville County area. And I'll just tell you this, there's a lawsuit on this exact topic that alleges that in 2022 that there were some district employees at the Bonneville School District that used district funds totaling over $13,000 to print and distribute promotional materials that were advocating for the school bond issue that was on the ballot back in 2022. I'll tell you this, a court will have to decide in the Bonneville County situation and the Ada County situation if it gets to that point. There's a 40-day window after Election Day, Brian, where somebody could file a complaint and basically said, we don't think this is fair. If a judge were to find that, then basically what would happen is if the bond passed, they would have to throw it out because of the, the infringement on the law. So it's very nuanced, and that word need, that could be something that gets stuck on it. I know in Bonneville, there was a handful of words they were stuck on in terms of what was on the flyers, what was on the promotional materials.
They use the words need, aged, and overcrowding to promote their schools and the need for filling them, I guess, or replacing them.
And it will be difficult, too, because Ada County, they have a whole website set up answering questions, talking about alternative sentencing. So a lawyer would have to go through all of it and decide if he thinks it's biased or not.
And Ada County Sheriff's Office says they're the ones who put this out.
Ada County put it out, yes. It's informational.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe. We all know about election integrity, right? A political buzzword, or phrase actually, that we've heard since the 2020 election, and something certain candidates in Idaho used as the foundation of their campaign recently. Most of the claims are based on conspiracy theories, however, with really no link to reality. But if you want to avoid that becoming an issue again, well, it's best to get out ahead of those claiming fraud. Ada County is just one of those, or is one of those counties that is doing just that, and they're rolling out a new product for tomorrow's election. Cages, which are self-contained voting precincts. Previous elections, it was up to the chief judges of each precinct to protect the integrity and security of the ballots and the voting equipment. Well, Ada County Clerk Trent Triple shows off this new idea.
We've designed these cages to be able to fit through a standard door, but it contains all of the equipment required to run a polling place, to include the voting booths, all the printers, all the equipment, and now all of the ballots, as you can see on the top, the ballot boxes. So these will be prepped by us in-house. We'll lock them. They have locks on the outside. The chief judges will have keys. Now these get delivered directly to the precincts, and the chief judges will now open them up and be able to set the whole process up. So these will contain everything except the ballots and the machines that are the scanners, the precinct scanners.
And then at the end of the night, the chief judges are going to hand deliver those cages with all the stuff back inside, back to the Ada County Elections Office for the ballots to be counted. At that point, yes, those ballots will be included in that. Those cages, though, they also have a GPS tracker attached to them, so they can make sure where they are at all times. The cages, they're being built locally. There are only about 20 of them so far, so not all the precincts are going to have these tomorrow, but the hope is in the future, for future elections, they're going to use them all across the county.
20 years ago, I was broke and drug addict and everything else underneath the sun. 20 years from that, now I have to prove that I was worth something.
20 years to prove it. Well, they only got to see about 6 of those years. That is Christopher Tapp after he was released from prison in 2017. The Idaho Innocence Project confirmed to the 208 that Chris Tapp died this past weekend after an accident. He was just 47 years old, but he spent nearly half his life behind bars for a crime he did not commit. This story dates back to 1996 when the state convicted Tapp of raping and murdering an 18-year-old woman in Idaho Falls. DNA evidence linked him to the crime, but DNA experts later proved the science and the methods they were used incorrectly, which is now a good time to bring in Andrew Bartline, who sat down with one of the people responsible for Tapp's exoneration. Andrew?
Yeah, and it might sound counterintuitive a little bit, or maybe ironic perhaps, but the man who really leads the Innocence Project here in Idaho, Brian, Dr. Greg Hampikian, he says that Tapp actually taught him a lot about life. Even though Tapp had little control over his own, Tapp only got his life back after Hampikian and his team looked into the case, as Brian just said, and then proved his innocence. While Tapp was released from prison in 2017, he was only exonerated of his murder conviction years later when police finally caught that real murderer. It's a story that received national attention, but Hampikian says the real story is about the personal attention. Tapp was his client, later became a work colleague. Above all, he was a friend.
And I'm co-director of the Idaho Innocence Project that works with people like Chris Tapp to help them prove their innocence. he was very famous for saying that we rejected him the first time, and I think he just got a quick rejection based on the fact that DNA had already been used in his case. Nobody in the innocence movement all over the country that I consulted thought we had a chance to get back into court with DNA. But all of that took a lot of years. We had to change laws. We passed 2 laws because of Chris. We passed a DNA testing statute, which we had to change for his case and others. And then we got compensation and a mechanism for innocence. So we had a long, hard-working relationship. And really, we didn't become friends until he got out. I love Chris. He called me his crazy uncle. You know, I think of him more as a son. And I got a call that he was in a coma, I think it was Wednesday or Tuesday last week. I spent a lot of time today getting angry, getting very upset, talking to other people around the country who know Chris, and just, I mean, it's terribly frustrating. You know, he got compensated a few months ago, and in that short time, both Stacy, his wife, and him are dead.
Thank goodness Sarah helped out, but she got out.
His college years, his graduate education years, his professional years for 20 years, from the time he was, you know, a teen when he got arrested, was the school of hell, and it marked him. It didn't sit well with him. And as much as I have a very clear head about what I do and my work, it's been a hard morning. It's been a hard day. We spent this last weekend in Montana together, up in these cabins, and I'm going to remember him by some private conversations that we had, sitting in his truck, and then by the water, and the things that he told me about what's really important to him, and I cherish that deep in my heart. And it's the things that are important to all of us, but he had a very poetic way of saying it, because he's this big tattooed guy, and he's telling me about how much he likes cuddles. And I almost lost it, but I actually was just so warmed by it, because here we are talking like, you know, men. We're just having a men alone time, talking tough, talking whatever, and he's like, oh, just gotta tell you, Rick, I like cuddles. Yeah, that was him, man. He was a teddy bear. He's a great guy.
Dr. Hampikian mentioned it briefly there. The city of Idaho Falls settled with Tapp for $1.7 million for his wrongful conviction. That was back in August, Brian. So you think about, you get 20 years of your life taken away from you. You get paid back for that. I don't know if a dollar figure can right or wrong of that level, but it's not like he really had the time to do what he probably would have wanted to do with his life going forward. 6 years and some change.
Exactly. And I was listening to Dr. Hampikian talk about those moments they spent together. And I was thinking to myself, I'd love to sit in and hear some of those conversations. We got a little sample of it right there, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I think one of the more interesting parts too is that, you know, Hampikian says when somebody is freed through the Innocence Project, they tell them, you don't owe society anything.
Right.
Because people have this bug in them, I want to help others, I want to give back. And he says, that's awesome if you want to, but you don't owe anybody anything. And over time, when people do get compensated, they kind of fade away. They go and live their life because there's a life for them to go live. They deserve that. Well, he says, for whatever reason, there was just this bug deep inside of Chris. He kept coming back, and he'd always say, this is the last time I'm doing it. It's the last time I'm going to give a lecture, last time I'm going to give a speech or talk to lawmakers. And it wasn't. He would come back again and again and again up until, you know, those last couple months. He was helping out with the Innocence Project, lectures, speeches, talking at a university, or, you know, stuff with legislation in different states, not just in Idaho, but Oregon as well. He went around and talked to many places, went to New England even.
Wow. Well, did a lot in that short amount of time that he was allowed to have.
Yep.
Appreciate it, Andrew. This is the part of the show where we ask for your questions, your comments, and your concerns. Do you have any questions about the election or comments about anything else happening around the 208? Text us, the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. Don't forget to include your name in the hashtag the 208. Remember, if you keep them clean, concise, and clever helps, well, you might be one step closer to getting your comment shared at the end of the show. Of course, lots of other things going on around the 208. We're on the eve of Election Day, but we have an update on Lisa Sanchez. We got something about steps, and of course, another something about sculptures. Here's Jude Binkley with the 411.
The Lisa Sanchez saga continues. The former Boise City Councilwoman filed an appeal to the Idaho Supreme Court last Monday after she lost her city council seat back in January. Then she filed a lawsuit in April. Sanchez claims she inadvertently moved out of her district while the city was being redistricted and was unlawfully removed. Sanchez's attorney, Wendy Olson, said in a statement, "The district court made its decision as a matter of law. We think it's an important question to have answered by Idaho's highest court." A lot of us have those annoying smartwatch reminders to get up and get your steps, but what if you earned money for each step you took? That's what mayors from across the state did in the 10th annual Mayor's Walking Challenge. 98 people raised over $85,000. That's the most in history. The money goes to projects that encourage physical activity in their communities. And the regional winners are, drumroll please, Isaac Loveland from Albion, Rebecca Sorensen from American Falls, Diane Holt from Beauville, and Jerome Wagner from Caldwell. Redwood Park is getting some new art, and the artist is asking for your help. City leaders helped pick artist James Peterson to design a sculpture inspired by the natural beauty of the fruit garden and honor Ustick Townsite's history of being at one point the area's largest apple orchard. You can submit your ideas through the 30th on an online survey on the City of Boise's website, or join the City of Boise's Public Art Team's input sessions this Thursday from 1 to 4 and Saturday the 18th from 10 to 1. The sculpture is supposed to be installed next year. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Jude Binkley.
What's your 411? Text your thoughts. Text us your thoughts and your questions to the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. Include your name and the hashtag the 208. Oh, and you know the drill. Short, sweet, simple. It's the best way to get yours shared at the end of the show.
Gorgeous photos from over the weekend with the stormy weather of those rainbows. And I'll throw one more into the mix from just this afternoon. Thanks to Bob for sharing this with me on Facebook of the rainbow, double rainbow. You can just see its twin, very faint in the upper portion of that picture. This was taken in Marsing just this afternoon. So of course, the silver lining with the stormy weather is that we get to enjoy beautiful views of rainbows. So as far as the stormy weather goes, we are still seeing some out there, but we are also now seeing some blue sky mixed in with the clouds. It's actually been a really beautiful evening so far. 54 degrees, that is our normal daytime high for Boise for early November. We've been up to 57 so far, so relatively mild, not as comfy as our Sunday. We hit 65 in Boise yesterday. How nice was that? So not that warm, and of course it's been a mostly wet Monday. We are drying out now. Winds out of the northeast indicate that we are seeing now that cold front making its way through. We've had a southerly wind most of the day. Still looks a little ominous over Payette Lake in McCall, where it's 39 degrees. So snow levels have not dropped down to 5,000 feet yet. They will overnight, though, and we will likely continue to see showers into Tuesday. So McCall could have some snow on the ground by tomorrow morning and off and on throughout the day. Tomorrow, that snow will continue to fall. Almost 3 inches fell at Tamarack. This gets all you skiers and boarders excited, I'm sure. At 6,600 feet at that mid-mountain snow stake, we saw that snow. So snow level was about 6,000 to 6,500 feet throughout the day today. So here's that outlook for today. Again, we hit 57. Our average high is about 53 degrees. We have 6,500ths of an inch of rain in Boise that has fallen in just the first 6 days of the month. Pretty phenomenal as far as that rainfall goes. And the good news is, if you're maybe sick of it, you want to dry out a little bit, you're ready to maybe get back to being able to wash the car, rake up the leaves. For the most part, the heavy rain in the lower elevations does look to be over and done with. We're still seeing Magic Valley rain right now, some high elevation snow showers. We'll continue some showers in the high elevations overnight, but for the valley, a couple sprinkles possible tonight, possibly holding on into tomorrow morning. I won't rule out completely a couple of rain showers early, but for the most part, drier weather works its way in. Also, we could have some fog tomorrow morning. Then the main piece of this system will come in during the day tomorrow. So once that fully exits late Tuesday, that's when we'll really see things drying out. But as we look at our West Central Mountain forecast, you can see rain and snow showers on tap for tomorrow, with morning lows in McCall down to about 29 degrees. That will allow snow to fall all the way down to our mountain valley floors. We get more sunshine Wednesday and Thursday, but those morning lows will really drop as those skies clear. So be ready in the Treasure Valley by Thursday morning for a hard freeze to set in. High temperatures drop a little bit tomorrow, so mid to upper 40s in the Magic Valley, where a wintry mix is possible tomorrow morning. Make sure you check road conditions before you head out. Here in the Boise area, we'll hit 53 degrees tomorrow with a brisk wind, and then clearing out, cooling down Wednesday with a few more showers popping in on Friday.
All right, day before the election day, and you've probably been inundated with a lot of text messages sent to your phone over the last week or so, maybe even a little bit longer. But Jim in Caldwell asks, what's with all the vote for me text messages and where do they get my number? We've talked about this before, but anytime you fill out a form, let's say maybe a contest to win a prize, and you put down your cell phone number, home phone number, whatever, you put down a phone number, chances are those companies are selling that information, and that's how they get a hold of your information. So wherever you put that form down or that number down on any form, could be anywhere. It's possible that that gets sold to the people that really want to use it. If my math is correct, David in Boise County says Chris Tapp got less than $10 an hour for the time he was incarcerated, which is pathetic. He should have gotten at least $17 million, and even that can't offset freedom, says David in Boise County. And he got that from the city of Idaho Falls, by the way, $11.7 million. R.I.P. Chris Tapp. I met him in Bannock County Jail where I was a nurse. We met a couple of times after his release. He handled it better than most would, I believe. He was a real sweet guy, says Chrissy, and he will be missed by a lot of people. See you tomorrow.